Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business, and today we're going to be talking about stablecoins in the second part of my stablecoin series, where we're going to be looking at algorithmic stablecoins, specifically looking at some of the very popular instances like UST, which recently depegged and collapsed Terra and basically crashed the whole market. We're finally getting to that. Talking about some of the history behind that, like Basis Cash, and then looking at some previous examples like Iron Titan Finance, and another case of USDD, what Tron just released, which is another algorithmic stablecoin. And then we'll just generally kind of look at stablecoins as a whole, looking at the list they have on CoinMarketCap and just kind of seeing how many have been successful. Looking at some various things like what seigniorage or however that's pronounced is. We'll get into all of that after a quick word from my sponsor today. A big thank you and shout out to my sponsor Cake Wallet, which is an open source, non-custodial Bitcoin and Monero wallet that also has a built-in exchange. It's available on iOS and Android. All right, thanks again to my sponsor. Let's jump right into it. So the first thing we'll look at is just what is an algorithmic stablecoin. As I mentioned before, UST is a very popular one. Very simply put, it's different from what we just talked about on the previous episode of this, talking about fiat collateralized stablecoins, where they're backed by something, specifically fiat currency. In this instance, with algorithmic stablecoins, they're not technically backed by something. It's a little confusing because they're using incentives to keep the peg versus actually backing it. And traditionally, most algorithmic stablecoins have failed over time. And, while there can be good ones, and there's a few nuggets here and there, for the most part, generally, algorithmic stablecoins tend to fail. And what they are, very simply, it's just that the algorithmic aspect is they're trying to balance out the peg between the currency and whatever it's attached to some degree, right? So the easiest way to talk about this is my little summary of it is, and partially CoinMarketCap's definition, but it's designed to achieve price stability as well as balance the circulating supply of an asset by being pegged to a reserve asset, such as the US dollar, gold, foreign currencies, etc. So in this instance, UST, for example, was pegged to the US dollar, but to achieve the stability, it was balancing between its supply and not between UST and USD, but rather between UST and Terra's Luna. And typically, most algorithmic stablecoins balance between two assets, like I mentioned, Iron Titan Finance, balancing between Iron and Titan. That's generally how that kind of goes with algorithmic stablecoins. I mean, there's different versions, and we'll kind of look at the nuances. But generally, it's the concept that you don't have to provide a backing to the coin or collateralize it, but instead you're just balancing and issuing more coins. Say it goes above $1, you issue more coins to inflate it back down to $1. And if it goes below $1, what they'll try to do is buy up coins from the market to push the price back to $1, and they'll keep doing that to balance it out. What happens when algorithmic stablecoins fail is when that isn't able to be achieved properly, and has a lot of people wondering, like with Do Kwan's Terra Luna and UST, is this by design, or is this like an accidental flaw of just stablecoins in general? We'll try to answer that question by going through this long document I've prepared, about 2,000 words. You can read the blog version of this if you prefer. I'll have a summarized version of this in the description, but I'll link to the blog version if that's what you'd prefer to look at. But the too long didn't read or too long didn't listen of this entire thing. My general conclusion, if you want this early, is a simple litmus test for any coin, wondering if it's like algorithmic and if it's safe and all these different things, is and this isn't for everything, but it's 99% accurate, I've found, is are they providing yields from their coin? And how is that possible if it's a stable coin? Typically, they say it's staking, just like USDD did or does, and I'll show you in a little bit. But really, it's either inflation rewards or lending. Typically, it's really just lending, and they're lying when they say they're staking. But generally, it's lending. Things are different, but if they're providing a yield, it's usually from an algorithmic stablecoin, and they usually don't work out very well because they also offer crazy high yields. Ironically, USDD is offering 20%, same as Anchor was for UST, and they call it risk-free, just like UST was a guaranteed return. Whenever you get into these guarantees, risk-free, promise, all that kind of nonsense, you're really, really getting down the rabbit hole of like looking to get wrecked, unfortunately. So we're going to take a look at some of the general stablecoins in the entire market, and then we'll go through these specific examples that I've mentioned. So this is all the algorithmic stablecoins listed according to CoinMarketCap. You can see, many are fairly close to their peg, some not so close, some completely depegged, like UST here, it's only a cent. Ironically, now this is Terra Classic, and they created another Terra, like they have Classic, and then they have the new one, which is just normal Terra Luna now, and that completely failed as well. Go figure. And it's not going to be surprising when we really get into this research, and I really explain all this to you, that Do Kwan has been doing this for years, actually, and kind of wild, but we'll get into that. But as you can see here, there's a handful of these, and they're not the best at keeping to their peg exactly. Some of them are fairly close, but a lot of them are usually within 5 to 10 cents, because again, it's mostly based on incentives and different things to encourage the market and the community to keep it at its peg, but they're never, definitively pegging it. And a lot of these will also say that they're decentralized, so there's no way for them to just ensure the peg aside from providing the right incentives. So that's kind of where you get into the weeds of things, because it's like, oh, but it's decentralized. So if you like decentralization, you got to do algorithmic stablecoins. But then if anything bad happens, if there's a hack, if it depegs, you're all screwed. The only good part of the fully centralized USDT, USDC, BUSD, all the top stablecoins that are fiat collateralized is, at the very least, they can ensure that nothing bad really goes wrong with it. Given there isn't like a full run on the cryptocurrency, they can generally ensure that nothing really goes wrong because they have total control. With these decentralized ones, decentralization is great, but if I have to rely on just the community and the confidence of the community in the coin and just the market incentives that they provided, that's not enough to really keep a coin stable, at least in my opinion. And I mean, the evidence of everything that's gone on and the coins that we're going to look at today will also back that up. These are probably failed ones. Most of the failed coins aren't even listed here. So this doesn't really give you a holistic look at what's actually out there, but this gives you some idea to start off, right? So first, we'll talk about Basis Cash, which is the first project of Do Kwan that many people were unaware of because he was kind of pseudo-anonymous with it. He made this with Nader El-Naji, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. The guy who made BitClout, which then became Deso, which I've also generally considered a scam. And ironically, both of these guys who were part of this completely failed project then went on to do more sketchy projects. And it's ironic that Do Kwan has already been part of failed stablecoins, algorithmic stablecoins in the past. Most scammers, not necessarily saying it was a scam, but just like him, just like Nadir, just like most scammers out there, they never admit that it was a scam, and they go on to make many more scams after the first one. Just like we see now with Luna Classic and the new Luna. It's never going to stop. He's always going to keep making more projects, and the next one will be right. The next one will be right. Just get as much money as you possibly can from the people who are basically just desperate at this point for you to be correct. So, Basis Cash is the first failed project by them. Created in 2020, was pretty quickly cracked down on by the SEC and shut down. If you look at it today, as of writing this, it's 0.0076 cents, depegged from $1. And like most algorithmic stablecoins, the concept is just that nothing is backing this coin, but they have incentives to provide the users to keep it pegged to $1. The way that they did it was through Basis shares or holding a Basis bond that promises the user, the holder, a premium once BAC or Basis Cash returns to the dollar peg. They're always relying on some sort of arbitrage that you'll make your money back once it gets back to the peg. Like, that's kind of the idea. And it's funny that they promise, because again, when you see those words, as I've said, it's going to be a failed project. Because to even say that, you already know there's problems coming. This kind of thing, where you are relying on the arbitrage of it going below its actual value, is called, I don't know exactly if this is how you pronounce it, but seigniorage, or seigniorage, or I don't know exactly how it's pronounced. You can see the word here, but it's the process where the cost to mint and distribute new coins is less than their actual value. So, for example, if they're creating more of the stablecoin, but it's not actually worth $1, but it's supposed to be worth $1, it's costing them less to create it than it's actually worth. Unless it's the flip side, where it's now costing you more to create it than it's actually worth, and then obviously people aren't going to do that. But the idea would be that you'd get the equivalent value, so that once it gets back to its peg, you'll have made money. So for example, the idea here would be that, say Basis Cash went down to 97 cents. You switched a bunch of your shares or whatever into Basis Cash, and at 97 cents, and you got your 97 cents worth for each 97 cents that you put in, like equal value. But then that 97 cents gets back to $1. You've now made money from that arbitrage. That's my general understanding. I don't know if that's the perfect way to explain it, but that's my understanding of how this works. Regardless, it's completely unsustainable, in my opinion, at least. There's no way that this can work. It's really just people looking at this for an economic opportunity to make money. So I just don't see this really ever working. And there's a ton of seigniorage coins, which I generally consider the graveyard of algorithmic stablecoins, because you can see that none of them are actually pegged to $1, except for Frax. But that's like one of the only examples that is actually doing okay out of all of these coins. So all of these coins, as you can see, are completely depegged. Like, they're not even remotely close to $1. And you can see a bunch of the failed coins from before. Like, it's very interesting to me how this works. Very, very interesting. You can see Basis Cash right there, which we were just talking about. And just like Terra, there was a second version of Basis Cash as well, called the Basis Dollar, which was an attempt to revive the project. And that failed as well. I don't know if that was by Do Kwan, because then that would make him at 4 failed projects at this point. But either way, from that, Do Kwan went on to create Terra and UST. This is what most people are familiar with, considering it just crashed the market. And there's been a lot of speculation, like, was this manipulation from BlackRock? Was this, like an attack on Terra? Or was this just bound to happen because it's completely unsustainable with their 20% APY guarantee. And they were just funneling all their money into afford that. So to back up a little bit, the main reason that a lot of people liked UST so much is because it was a stable coin, and you could put it into Anchor protocol and earn 20% guaranteed APR. How are they guaranteeing it? Because it wasn't really staking. They were lying. It was lending. Beyond that, I think there was only about 30% borrowers against the lenders. So all that 20% that was supposed to be gotten by the lending was really just being paid out by Terra. So it was completely unsustainable, and it was bound to crash no matter what based on that. Now, some entity might have been able to find this loophole and manipulate it, or it was just bound to fail eventually because of, its unsustainability, or maybe like all of his other failed projects, maybe he did this on purpose, Do Kwan. I'm not suggesting any of that, though. So after it depegged, people are trying to balance it out, minting one coin or the other, trying to get the arbitrage, going back and forth. And then they couldn't keep up the price. And eventually it became so far depegged that instead of trying to mint back and forth, people started all selling out like a bank run, just crashing it even more. And then as it continued to crash even more, exchanges halted trading on it, making it even harder for it to regain its peg. And it's sent into what is called a death spiral, where it's like a negative feedback loop that keeps going and going and going until it's done. And then obviously he made Luna Classic or Terra Classic or whatever. And right out the gate, that went from $20 now to $3. So I don't know why people thought doing the exact same thing all over again would suddenly solve everything. Obviously it didn't. And my heart goes out to all the people who got wrecked on this stuff. But I've been saying for so long, a lot of this stuff is sketchy. A lot of this stuff is fluff. You can go way back into my videos and you can see that I said it was very sketchy when I did my lending versus staking video a long time ago, that places that lie and say you're staking when you're lending are no good. And I talked about Anchor, and I talked about all this. I saw this coming from a mile away. I did a thing on BitClout over a year ago saying that it was basically a scam, and it just so happens that they worked together under their pseudonyms, and they did all this. Not surprising. Not surprising. So then beyond that, with the new one, they did an airdrop, and many people complained about how that went. The reality is scammers and people who do these kinds of things have no problem moving on to the next project. And this has been very obvious. Celebrities running multiple scams, Basis Protocol, which led to BitClout and Dezo, and all these other examples that we can point to. This is always the MO, that they always just keep moving on to the next thing, moving on to the next thing, moving on to the next thing. And it seems like that's what's happening here too. And yeah, the sad part was we could have seen it coming if we had done more research into Do Kwan, and if people really did their research and looked into this stuff and, is it sustainable? Is it not sustainable? No. But, do your own research has become such a cliche that people just say it and it doesn't mean anything anymore. So no one actually does any research, or the research that they do is just looking at other people who are pro for that thing, and they're not really looking at it. Like, don't even look at pro and against, just look at the actual coin yourself. And if you don't fully get it, don't invest in it. In December of 2021, CoinDesk did some interviews with various people, and Ryan Clements brilliantly pointed out the basic vulnerability of it was the concentration risk for holders. And because of this risk, large groups or, potential just individuals could move the market in significant ways. That is exactly what happened. The reserves that they also had with Bitcoin and stuff really seemed like a marketing play because they were also not in the original design, which kind of shows that they weren't really even confident in their own design if they had to go and do extra stuff to try to secure it because it wasn't working very well. I have Do Kwan's quote here of just generally how it works. You're minting. You got your Luna, you burn $1 worth of Luna to mint $1 worth of Terra USD and vice versa. And you keep going between the two to balance it out to try to get some arbitrage and make money off of this process. The incentives for that, sure, you can have a stablecoin built off of incentives, but you can't just rely on market incentives and just be so confident in that to be infallible and just, there's no way to question it. It's perfect. It's never perfect because it's never been done perfect, and there's no perfect thing to refer to. It's not really that innovative. It's kind of like all the things that came before that failed, and we'll keep going into that. So the price is just users balancing it out, sends them into the death spiral. They started by trying to protect from the death spiral with $1.5 billion in Bitcoin, lending that to trading firms to support the activity. And then they ended up selling all the Bitcoin at market price, which crashed Bitcoin, crashed the whole market more or less. And now we've even got people who want to regulate stablecoins because of this whole fiasco. And honestly, at this point, I'm not even super against it because 98% of stablecoins are 100% centralized anyways. So why not regulate them and make sure that they're at least legit and they're not doing anything sketchy? Because it's not like they're going to be regulating decentralized stablecoins, because all these decentralized stablecoins are generally ones that fail, generally, because there's some out there that are good. Like I like HBD, but I need to do more research, and I'm going to do interviews with some people and really dive into HBD on its own separately from this, though it is generally technically an algorithmic stablecoin. That's a whole other story though. Right after UST failed and this whole fiasco happened, DEI, not DAI, which most people are familiar with. This is a little bit less of a popular coin, but same general thing happened. It depegged and failed and went into a death spiral, very similarly to how this worked, right? So they also had a $13.4 million hack in April, which is probably worth mentioning because obviously that's going to have some impact as well. But more or less, this could have been prevented if they had set this up in different ways, or if it was centralized, or many different things could have prevented these kinds of collapses. But that's not the way that they were designed. And, here we are, right? Now for Iron Finance, they also have Steel, Titan, Iron, all that stuff. This was the popular coin that was promoted by Marc Cuban, and within 3 days of his endorsement of the project, it dropped, I think it was like $50, $60 all the way down to zero, more or less. Around $50 down to $0 in just a few days. And it went from 2.18 billion to just 10 million very, very, very quickly. And this generally tends to happen with most coins. And, the too long didn't read is Iron depegged. The arbitrage between Titan and Iron became unprofitable. So people were not incentivized to keep trading between them. And they began to sell out of the project because it was no longer sustainable. And as this happens, the exchange is halted, and then it goes into a death spiral, as is always the case with algorithmic stablecoins that depeg, can't keep the peg, fail, people sell out, exchanges halt the trading, death spiral to zero, right? You can see some of the resources. I've got a lot of sources littered throughout this that you'll be able to find in the blog, but obviously I'm not going to be going into the nitty gritty for everything because there's so much to cover here. I mean, I wanted to do more, but this is already going to be so long that I figured this is probably good as is. Now we'll talk about Tron's new USDD, decentralized USD, right? They claim to be the first decentralized algorithmic stablecoin issued under the Tron DAO Reserve. Also, the decentralized autonomous organization of Tron Reserve. The irony about the decentralized USD and the Tron decentralized autonomous organization stuff is whether or not it is really decentralized, Tron is centralized. So if you build something that's decentralized on top of a centralized chain, then it's not decentralized, because the chain is the single point of failure of centralization that makes it not decentralized. So I'm not quite sure how they got there, but not really surprising given that most algorithmic stablecoins are trying to be like a decentralized stablecoin, because most of the popular stablecoins are centralized. So if you're trying to give people something else to go to, it's got to be obviously fairly different. I won't bother getting into the finer details of the mechanisms because they're all fairly similar to how stablecoins work. But, you know, the reality is most of the things that Justin Sun gets involved with, he kind of ruins. DLive, Steemit, all lost insane amounts of money, completely tanked the projects. PewDiePie left DLive. Steemit completely tanked after he took over. All the projects, all the community, all the developers, they all went to Hive. So doesn't have a very good track record of doing this kind of stuff. Ironically, even though I'm not a fan of him at all, Tron has done very well over the years, and it's just slowly gone up, and it's not been very volatile, and it's been all right. It's very centralized, but it's been doing all right. Now, with USDD, because it's part of the reserve, I actually think Tron is at the most risk it's ever been at. If there was a depeg, which I'm sure there probably eventually will be. So very, very confusing, because they're also offering 20%, just like Anchor Protocol, and they're saying it's risk-free, as we know how that goes. But why tell you when I can show you? Because no point in relying on what I say when we can just rely on what they say. And ironically, not even just their coin, but also USDT, they'll give you another 20% as well. Staking. They say it's staking, but it's obviously not staking. It is lending. So this is a lie. This is not real. And you can know this, right? You know that's not real, because how do you stake a stable coin? How does a coin that is always supposed to be worth the same amount provide you yields or rewards or anything? It doesn't, unless you're lending it. and that's how that goes. So, but as you can see here, risk-free yields. There's no risk. It's free of risk. That's almost a guarantee that it's risky. Like, ironically, it's very, very hilarious, but you can see they're backing. They're, you know, over collateralized, which is good, blah, blah, blah. It's decentralized. It works on a couple chains, so apparently it's chain agnostic, even though it's mainly backed by Tron. I mean, it's got Bitcoin in there and stuff too, but I would say this is probably just like UST. Like, why would you have other stable coins backing your coin, and why use Bitcoin? Like, UST used Bitcoin basically as a marketing play, not because they actually believed in it. And then they tanked the whole market because of it. All right. So, I mean, everything was written right there for you to see as to why this is going to fail. It's supposed to be risk-free, and it's guaranteed that there's no risk, which is impossible that they can guarantee that, let alone sustainable to be giving you 20% yields. I mean, obviously they're lending. I'd like to see how many people are borrowing against that and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this just started, so maybe it'll become more obvious very soon. But yeah, like I also pointed out, their reserves are made up almost the same way that that USTs were. I don't know. It's so weird. It's like, it's so similar to UST. It's uncanny how like similar they've tried to make it, and then thinking that it's going to be fine. Remember, Most algorithmic stablecoins fail. This has the exact same traits as UST. Most of the things that Justin Sun does, aside from Tron, like everything he's pretty much done after Tron, has been a colossal fail, which has lost tons of money for everyone involved. So just be very wary about that when you go to get involved with anything like this. A few more stablecoins to note. Some different ones because they're not all the exact same, but like Frax Protocol is a fractional algorithmic stablecoin, which uses Frax shares, which again, they've dramatically gone down, but they are still trading in the green from inception at the very least. Neutrino USDN is one of the more popular algorithmic stablecoins, and it's crypto collateralized. So that's a little bit different than just, being pegged like the way that most algorithmic stablecoins are. And I don't know why I put Ampleforth connected to that. I need to get the actual one. Ampleforth is the next one, but I'll fix that after. Ampleforth is an Ethereum-based cryptocurrency with a circulating supply that automatically adjusts based on the market via rebases. Rebasing is a whole thing where they adjust the supply based on like how much is actually out there and everything that they're doing. It's a very convoluted thing to get into, so I won't really get into rebases, but just there's other ways to do this, and there's other methods and strategies that people have used for stable coins, and these ones have been okay so far. But I mean, Ampleforth is never pegged to the dollar. And a lot of people have lost money on Frax shares, and I'm really just waiting for most of these coins to fail at this point, because that's what happens to most algorithmic stablecoins. Again, not every algorithmic stablecoin, but why take the chance of trying to find the needle in the haystack when most of them, you're most likely going to end up with something that's not going to work for you? Why take the risk? Why even put yourself in that position, right? So this was really just to give you an idea of some failed algorithmic stablecoins and a USDD that just launched not that long ago, and just give you an idea of the space. I personally have HBD. I'm not saying that it's perfect or anything. I still need to learn more about it because, ever since I started to get into this, I've been doing so much research on stablecoins, and the more research I do, the more I want to just get away from any stablecoins of any kind. And I still need to do more research on HBD to even endorse it or encourage it here for you guys. I'm sure some people might be a little upset with that since they think HBD is amazing. I still think it's pretty good. I hold it. It's the only stablecoin I do have. But I still need to do more research on it before I can say, all algorithmic stablecoins or most algorithmic stablecoins are sketchy, but just this one is perfectly fine. A lot of it still comes down to the community's confidence and the incentives and things like that. So, nothing is perfect, but I still have to do more research on that. But that's everything. That's pretty much my synopsis of algorithmic stablecoins. They're fairly risky. Most of the popular ones that have big market caps and that had a lot of, hype and things around them, most of those have failed. So do keep that in mind before you get into these projects that promise, guarantee, they're risk-free, buzzwords. It's the writing's on the wall. I mean, if you see that for anything else, if I saw a stock that guaranteed 20% dividends, all that would say to me is, okay, well then as they continue to do worse, they're still going to give out 20% dividends and they're just going to go to zero. A guarantee, even if it was real, still would mean bad things. Like if they're not willing to change that as they're losing money, then they will just go to zero. And if they are falsely guaranteeing that because they know that's just for marketing, then obviously it's a scam. So you're pretty in a bad spot regardless. It's just not good. It's not good. Any kind of guarantees or affirmations that it's impossible for anything bad to go wrong is almost an assured sign that something is going to go wrong. Like safe moon. It's safe to the moon. Fail. Safe Mars. Fail. Don't fall for that stuff. It's all just buzzwords. It's all marketing. It's all nonsense. As I learn more about stablecoins, I just want to run the opposite direction and just hold my Bitcoin and my Ethereum and just not have to deal with stablecoins at all, because the more you learn, the scarier it gets. So that's my synopsis of everything. If you want to hold your value, you're better to just get your money out, put it into something else, put it into gold, go through the transactions to actually do all that, or just continue to hold your crypto through the bearish times like we have now. I'm holding my Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think that's the best play. I see a great future for cryptocurrency, so I'm not too worried. And, you guys let me know. Am I wrong about any of this? Is there an algorithmic stablecoin out there that you feel confident in that doesn't promise or guarantee or whatever? Because I'm sure some people are going to say, oh, well, this stablecoin is better. This one is everything that it's supposed to be. But if I go and look at that stablecoin and it promises me something or has guaranteed yields or whatever, it's just like the rest of them. Like it's going to have the same problems probably. So if you're going to give me some sort of recommendation, at least make sure that it passes those basic flags for me to actually take it seriously. Because otherwise, if I look at it and it's got those same things, then I'm just going to say, no, that's silly. I can't rely on that. I'm not relying on buzzwords or marketing or anything like that. It's got to be different from before, because all these algorithmic stablecoins are basically the exact same thing, copy pasted, and then they just say, oh, but this time's different. And that's how you get ready for the next scam and lose all your money. So that's my take. This was a really long breakdown, so hopefully you guys stuck through all the way and you found this valuable. If you did, please let me know your thoughts on stablecoins and all this good stuff, and let me know, were you affected by this? I mean, everyone was affected by the crash, but did you hold Luna? Did you have UST? Have you ever been involved in another stablecoin that has had problems? Let me know all that good stuff in the comments below. If you did watch to the very end, I always greatly appreciate it. Do comment #1ham in the comments below, and that way I know you watched the whole video to the very end. Anyways, thank you so much. I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business, signing off. Cheers.